We did.
It's so good work. It's really good. You see, like, nice. Yeah, or if they could actually handle this damage.
Okay. Good evening, everybody. Apologies for the technical difficulties. Our technical director, Elena, is not with us tonight. She is online. So we just, again, can see how incredibly grateful we are for your technical skills. Okay. Liaison between the community, the Environmental Protection Agency, and the Montana Department of Environment, and engaging in the Superfund process to ensure the restoration of the former Smurfit-Stone Mill Site to a healthy ecological state for future generations. So we meet the first Thursday of the month at 6 o'clock right here. And first thing is we will have everybody just take a quick review of the minutes. If anybody sees anything in the minutes that jumps out at them, let us know. Otherwise, we'll just move on and say,
Should we introduce ourselves?
yeah, we're going to do quick introductions. And so I can't see who's online. Thank you. I'm part of
And note taker,
Assistant note taker.
Barb Sims, known as Bunny.
we're introducing.
Hello, I'm Nolan Lister. I'm a public information officer with the Department of Environmental Quality.
Sam.
Sam probably get fired from that job though. Later. Donovan Power with Haley and Aldrich.
Brianna Pabst, I'm the DEQ project manager for the site.
David Schmetterling, Montana Fish, Wildlife and Parks.
John Ottinger to the city.
Trustees, District 49.
Sam Brookhammer, GSI, Environmental.
I'm Shannon Terry, the Director of Environmental Health at Missoula Public Health.
Jack Bransky, Montford intern.
I'm Sophie Moon, I'm also with Montford. I'm Maria Queedy, also with Montford.
Athena Collins, I'm just here to find out more information.
Super duper. So we'll go ahead and go online. Brian, we're going to start with you.
I think you said me, Jerry. Brian, Natural Resource Damage Program. Sorry I couldn't make it over, and it is extremely choppy and hard to hear.
Okay.
Okay, we'll just do the best that we can. Then I see Kevin Stone.
Hello, Kevin Stone with Montana DEQ, and apologize I couldn't be over there in person. I'm pretty sick today and didn't want to subject my colleagues or any of you to maybe catching it.
I think we're on the line.
That's okay. Go ahead, Amy. We'll jump to you next.
All right, can you hear me? Can you hear me all right?
Yeah, it sounds like we're a little muffled.
Okay, well, I'm trying.
Is that better?
Amy Steinmetz, I'm DEQ's Waste Management and Remediation Division Administrator.
Okay, Isabel?
Hi, I am the DEQ site attorney.
Welcome. And it looks like Jen.
Hi, everyone. I'm Jen Harrington. I'm part of the admin team. Sorry I couldn't be there.
Okay, Chris.
Chris Stark, CSKT, staff scientist for the legal department.
And it looks like Rachel.
Hi, Rachel Parthasarthi from GSI.
And Trevor.
Yeah, Trevor Selch, fisheries pollution biologist with Fish, Wildlife and Parks.
Okay, great. Welcome, everybody. Thanks for hanging with us on our technical issues. I would like to, first of all, introduce Brianna officially, who's the Federal Superfund Project Manager with DEQ, and she's got all kinds of info to share. So take it away, Brianna. Let me just pull this first. Can you step close to the L so they can hear you more? Thank you. Yeah.
Speak loud. So I'm going to be talking about the role of DEQ at the Smurfit site and in the Superfund process. This stemmed from some conversations with Jerry, just kind of trying to get more information about what DEQ does in Superfund. And we also have some newer members to our team, so we thought it'd be helpful to introduce ourselves again. We were originally planning for Kevin to present half of the slides. It works online. If not, I can jump in. But I think start out first with just intros. So I'll go first. I'm going to pass the site manager for the fund process. I deal with more of the day-to-day and more specifically about my review. I've been with DEQ for 2 years. After that, I was working in for degrees in chemical engineering and bioengineering, and live in after college and
those programs. So I'm pretty busy, but I have cards with me. So if anybody needs any questions about this site or anything else DEQ related, and maybe they're not getting responses from their original sources or there's a couple contacts, always reach out and I can see if I can help get you whatever you might need, or even if it's just a phone call with somebody else. I try to have 1 degree in communication. As I was working for the Helena Independent Record for about 6 years. Prior to that, I did stabilities and enterprise timber at the lovely Big Timber Pioneer, which is still operating today. Even though they've been bought and sold a couple times in the 6 years. So, yeah.
Well, that's not working so good. I think it's all the radiation out there in Hooterville.
What happened? What happened? You got disconnected or something?
Sorry, folks. We're back, we think. Make sure everything's still set up and still using the owl. And yep. Okay, for the folks online, can you hear us? Again, thank you for that.
Thanks.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. All right, well, hopefully it keeps working this time. Apologies.
Yeah, the bandwidth seems a little bit better.
Okay.
Okay, great. Thank you for troubleshooting. So we just gave some intros in person. I'll just do a quick summary for those online. I am Brianna Pepst. I'm the DEQ project manager for the site. I generally deal with the specifics of the Superfund process and will be explaining my role a little bit more in the slides. And then Nolan introduced himself as our public information officer. But if those who are online for DEQ want to introduce themselves, maybe Kevin, if you want to start.
Sure. Kevin Stone, I'm the Federal Superfund Section Supervisor. That's a position I've had for right about 2 years now. Before that, I was a Public Information Officer at DEQ, and I've been with the agency for a total of about 5 years. My background is in communication. I studied environmental communication and natural resource conflict resolution for my graduate work at the University of Montana.
Amy, if you're still there, if you want to introduce yourself.
Sure. Amy Steinmetz, and again, Waste Management and Remediation Division Administrator. Been with DEQ for almost 21 years, in my current role for about 3. And sorry, Brianna, because I didn't hear all of your introductions in the room. Did you kind of want us to talk about our role with Superfund or with the site, or just the overview I just gave?
Yeah, I think that what you just gave is perfect, and we'll talk a little bit about kind of the overarching role of DEQ. So that's great. Izzy?
Hello, my name is Isabel, but as you just heard, I go by Izzy. I am actually pretty new at DEQ, relatively speaking. Actually, tomorrow will be my 7 months. So I was assigned this site pretty early on, and it's been a pleasure attending these meetings as frequently as I can to learn more. And that's just what I'm kind of trying to do at this point. So I have a pretty good idea of how your site works, and it's been a pleasure to kind of navigate that. So that all said, I am the site attorney. I will be involved when ARARS packages come out, as you'll hear a bit more later, I think, about ARARS. I kind of just assist EPA in creating a lot of the legal documents that will be associated with the site. So I'm another set of eyes at every step, essentially. Yeah, thanks, Brianna. I appreciate it.
Thank you. And I think that's everyone online. I know Katie was going to try to join us, but she's flying right now, but she is our bureau chief, and we'll explain a little bit more about what that means. Kevin, do you want to try to talk through these slides? Oh, I think you're muted.
Yeah, certainly. And if we're having some bandwidth issues, I may turn my camera off, but I'll keep that on for now. So if you want to advance forward, Nolan.
Yeah, okay.
Wait, it should be on. Maybe it's delayed.
Okay.
Are you seeing the one intros or the?
I am not. I'm actually seeing the base, just the introduction slide, the title slide. But I've got the slides here myself, so I can still kind of cover that. So, but no one else, but I guess no one else online would be able to see them.
That's okay. We don't want.
We start this year. Stopped it.
We just have to go back to sharing.
No, we don't, but we can.
We like this 1855 trees.
You can check.
I just want to look at you.
How about now?
Understanding what happens.
Right now, there are a lot of people.
There we go.
Safe, frankly, terrible.
Okay, I'm seeing that slide now. Thanks everyone in the room trying to navigate this for us. So I'm going to start big picture about who we are at DEQ, and then kind of work our way down to what we do in the federal Superfund program, and then hand things over to Brianna to talk about her work specifically at this site. So at DEQ, our mission is to champion a healthy environment for a thriving Montana. And what I appreciate about that mission is that it really recognizes the connection between the health of our environment, the health of our people, and the health of our economy. And the way we pursue that mission is by ensuring that Montanans have clean air, water, and land. We have a set of values that we operate by at DEQ. We all commit to these as DEQ employees, and we discuss them with our teams pretty regularly. And those are leadership, accountability, customer service, communication, and decision-making and disagreement, excellence, and efficiency and effectiveness. So I'm not sure what our current numbers are. We usually, as an agency, fluctuate between about 350 and just shy of 400 employees. We're mostly an agency of scientists, though of course we have accountants and attorneys and administrative staff and IT professionals. Our program staff are split out amongst our 3 divisions. And all of these divisions, I think, touch every community in Montana. The first I'll talk about is our air, energy, and mining division. So our air program, for example, maintains an air quality monitoring station in Frenchtown. Our energy program works with businesses and communities across the state. And our mining program permits different forms of mining, from coal to hard rock or open cut mines or gravel pits, of which there are several in the Missoula Valley. Our water quality program does work on water issues. It's kind of a combination of permitting, monitoring, and technical assistance. But if you think about it from the permitting side, that program was once permitted the Smurfit-Stone operation. They permit municipal municipal stormwater discharge, and we permit things like public water supplies and municipal wastewater treatment plants. And there's a lot of staff that are doing kind of core science around what the health of our Montana water bodies is, and provide technical assistance to things like a local water treatment plant, for example. And then our program is housed in the Waste Management and Remediation Division, which I will discuss next. So our division administrator, Amy Steinmetz, is on the call tonight. We do have 3 bureaus within our division. The Waste Management Bureau does have some non-permitting programs, such as our junk vehicle and recycling programs. They also do things like permit landfills and hazardous waste generators. Our Tanks, Brownfields, and Federal Facilities Bureau works on permitting underground storage tanks. There's a cleanup program for when underground storage tanks have leaked, and they work on federal facilities such as our military bases in Montana, and address contamination. Throughout our division, we're primarily dealing with waste generation and cleanup. And then there's our Superfund, Abandoned Minelands, and Construction Bureau, where our program is housed. So our bureau chief is Katie Garson-Forba. I think many of you have met her at the CAG meetings. She is on her way back from a work trip in DC. We have 4 programs in the bureau. There's my program, the Federal Superfund section. We also have a state Superfund unit, and I do see that I have a typo there. The law that they enforce is a state law called SECRA, which is modeled after CERCLA, the Federal Superfund law. We also have our Abandoned Minelands program, which operates under federal funding to address mining impacts. And then we have our construction program, which I will talk about just a second as I go into some of these sites. So we have 19 federal Superfund sites in Montana. These range from, a number of them are related to Montana's mining legacy and smelting legacy. So places like Butte, for example, Libby. We also have a number of sites that are a result of industrial chemicals, like from wood treatment operations or dry cleaning. And then we have some, for example, the Smurfit-Stone site, which was a formal industrial operation. So amongst these sites, we have some sites that are what we would call a PRP, or potentially responsible party-led site, such as the Smurfit-Stone site. That's where there is a responsible party or a number of responsible parties who are liable for implementing the cleanup. We also have some sites where there's not a viable responsible party, and we call those fund lead sites. Our program works on the bulk of these sites, but we do have several where, as a result of settlements, DEQ is implementing the construction elements of the cleanup. The Clark Fork River portion of the Milltown site is an example. And so those are where our construction program gets involved.
I'm listening to
so when we
boring.
Chris, could you mute yourself?
Yep.
Thank you. So diving into what the state role in Superfund is, that's captured in the National Contingency Plan, or what we call the NCP. That's the federal government's promulgated rules and regulations for how both CERCLA, or the Superfund law, and the National Pollution Act, the Oil Pollution Act are implemented. So it outlines a specific role for the states, which is based in meaningful and substantial state involvement. And so what that means, it kind of results in what we call our consultative role to EPA. We don't have a lot of formal power in the Superfund process, but we do have formalized influence in that process, and in a unique relationship to EPA and the Superfund process that's been sort of delegated to our agency and is implemented by the program that Brianna and I work in. We talk about how we best actualize that role, and what I talk to my staff about is that we do that by being trusted in communities, being trusted by EPA, and that's accomplished by being solid with the science and solid with the law. We also, at our sites, the NCP also outlines for fund lead sites that the state has cost share and operations and maintenance responsibilities. So that money is being paid out of the fund that puts the fund in Superfund. And the state has a 10% cost share for remedial action that is paid for by the fund. And then once remediation is completed, the state takes on operations and maintenance responsibility into perpetuity. There are a couple of unique elements about the state role. So one, you've heard it come up already from Izzy, is identifying ARARs, or applicable or relevant and appropriate requirements. We have come out and talked with the CAG about ARARs previously. We brought our previous site attorney, John Morgan, out. It could fill a whole meeting, but the kind of the straightforward explanation would be that these are state laws that need to be met by the remedy and the implementation of the remedy at any given site. The state also has the opportunity to provide concurrence, partial concurrence, or non-concurrence with a record of decision. That's not binding in the sense that we can stop EPA from moving forward with a selected remedy, but the state does, provide a letter basically of state support or places where we disagree. And lastly, the state concurrence is required for delisting a Superfund site. So when I took on this position a couple of years ago, I talked with and worked with Amy, our division administrator, to outline some principles for our program. And so I've talked a little bit about our role. And what these principles do for our program is give us guidance on how we best fulfill that role. What does success look like for us? And it can be a decision-making rubric for us as well. So there's these principles are, first of all, to ensure protectiveness. That's our North Star. That is our primary responsibility and is our number one principle. Second is to advocate for Montana communities. We see ourselves as something of a conduit to help carry community concerns, and we're looking out for Montanans, and we see that as core to our role. Then third is to promote forward progress. We want to get contamination, handled and cleaned up so it no longer represents an unacceptable risk to human health or the environment. So with that, I thank you all. I look forward to any questions that you might have, and I'm going to hand things over to Brianna to talk about specifically her work and our team's work at the Smurfit site.
Thanks, Kevin. So I'll talk a little bit more about what we specifically do for Smurfit, what I do in my role. As Kevin mentioned, we are in a consultative role to EPA, so we're the support agency, so our role sometimes isn't really clearly defined, and it can look different at different Superfund sites. So I'll go through some of the specifics of what we do on a regular basis. One of the main things we do is participate in various site meetings. We participate in monthly technical meetings with the responsible parties and EPA. In these meetings, we're talking about things like deliverable timelines and schedules. These are meetings where sometimes we'll look at preliminary data just to get an idea of what data is showing as it's coming in from the sampling to help us kind of plan for the next steps. We'll talk about scoping for work plans and work through any issues that we might have with the labs or data. We also have monthly meetings with just EPA and DEQ. These meetings have a fairly similar agenda where we are talking about review timelines and schedules, planning for the next steps. We often will use our meeting times to go through comments on the documents and try to get on the same page before we meet with the responsible parties. We usually meet with EPA a lot more often than just monthly, but monthly is what we have at minimum scheduled to meet with our larger site teams and our management teams to keep them in the loop as well. We also support EPA with the Frenchtown Working Group meetings. So for those who aren't aware, those are meetings with the larger stakeholder group. They're primarily focused on looking at data as it's coming in, evaluating it to see what the new data is showing us, also looking at some of the upcoming work plans. We had these meetings a lot more regularly last year when we were out there sampling more frequently, but we are planning to start them back up in December next month to go through some of the new data. Our role in these meetings is to support EPA. So they are EPA meetings, but we will assist with creating presentation materials, presenting on topics where it makes sense, and then helping to come up with topics that we think would be helpful for EPA to cover. These meetings are really helpful for us to get feedback from the larger stakeholder group to hear where they have questions and concerns. And it's helpful for us to, when we have to present on the data, it really makes sure that we are looking critically at the data to be able to answer any of the questions. And then lastly, we attend these CAG meetings. We really try to make it a priority to come to these meetings in person when we can. We recognize that it's really important for us to be able to do our job well is when we can hear from the community and hear any questions and concerns that you all might have. So we're really appreciative of the CAG group for giving us this forum and for those in the community for making time to come out. It's a really important part of the process. You want to go back one slide for a second? Sorry, I have a few more points. Yeah, so these are some of the meetings that we attend regularly. One thing I will note is we aren't the decision maker in the process and we don't have the final say, but we do get a seat at a lot of these meetings where decisions are being made. And I see our role as advocating to make sure that decisions are being made based on good science and the questions and concerns that we are hearing from the community are at least being considered in the decision-making process.
So Brianna, when you use the word stakeholders, who are you referring to?
Yeah, there's a lot of different groups. We have the Clark Fork Coalition, we have the Missoula County, Elena with Missoula County will be at those meetings. We have FWP, the tribes, I'm sure I'm missing.
Right.
Yeah, NRD.
Haley Aldridge.
Yeah, and then we have our respective consultants that are there as well. And then we also have representatives from the CAG and as well as representatives from the PRP. I'm sure there are more. It's a large.
Well, that's a good start. Thanks.
Another part of our role is reviewing and providing comments on deliverables. And I think this is one of the more important ways that we can impact the process. So I'll just share how the review process typically works. A lot of the documents are created by GSI, which is the consultant to the responsible party. They'll share the documents with myself and EPA, and we'll set timelines for review. Typically, that's anywhere from 2 weeks to 30 days, depending on the length and complexity of the document. We will review those concurrently, so we'll both be working on review and creating comments, and then at the end of the review process, we'll meet and go through all of our comments, discuss any ones where we might not be on the same page or might not be agreeing, and then we'll send one comment package to the responsible parties. They have a similar review timeline to incorporate those, typically 2 weeks to 30 days. And then we typically go through 2 rounds of revisions. So they'll respond with a second version of the document. We'll review again to make sure we feel like the comments have been appropriately incorporated. That review process is a little bit shorter just because it theoretically should take less time since we have gone through the document, but that's usually 1 week to 2 weeks. And then they'll do one more round of incorporating those comments to get to the final document. So that kind of explains why it takes a long time to get to a final document, but I think it is a really important part of the process that we are being really thorough in our review to make sure that we get to an end product that we agree with. So I'll go through some of the documents that we do review. Most recently, there are a lot that we'll be reviewing throughout the process, but these are the ones that have been applicable in the recent future and coming up. First, we have the field sampling plans. So these are the work plans that outline the sampling that will be performed, the objectives of the sampling, the methods, and how the data will be interpreted. So when we're reviewing these, we're really looking to make sure that we feel like the proposed sampling is adequate to meet the objectives. We're making sure that the methods that are being proposed are appropriate for the sampling and that it's consistent with other sampling that's been done. I think one way that we've been able to impact the process is we have been able to advocate for adding additional elements to those sampling plans when we feel like there is technical rationale to support adding additional sampling to those plans. When we were reviewing these, we really tried to look at some of the stakeholder developed data quality objectives. So the additional sampling request that was put together a couple years ago at this point. we really tried to understand what the goals were and what was in that plan, so we could at least make sure that was a part of the conversation.
What are we seeing in the picture?
Great question. So there's actually 2 of them are lysimeters. So those go into the ground and collect groundwater as it's either filtering down through the surface or moving throughout the soil. So it'll collect that water, and they've been monitoring these every month to see how much water is accumulating in them. And if we do get enough water, we will sample them, but so far they haven't been producing a lot of water. And then one of those is a well.
Where is it located?
Great question.
Concrete building right there?
It's,
So that
yeah.
it's solid waste base.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's in one of the solid waste basins. Not too far from the river, but not exactly on the river.
Okay. Just handy to know.
It's on the CC Prime web.
Oh yeah, I don't know if you're familiar, but a lot of the sampling plans we've had recently have a line of wells that we've been monitoring and sampling, and it's on that line.
Okay.
And
And some of the new ones that we added after a lot of discussion?
yeah, the lysimeters are very new, and then this is monitoring well 28, and that was part of the wells that were added last year. Or 2024. Another document that we have been reviewing regularly, and we're reviewing 2 of them right now, are the data summary reports. So these are where all of the sampling that's been performed, this is where the data is summarized and compiled. When we're reviewing these, we're really looking to make sure that they're accurate, that we feel like the conclusions are adequately supported by the data, and just trying to make sure that the data is valid and meets our quality control objectives. I think one way we've been able to impact this process is by requesting additional figures. So I think those have been helpful for us to be able to better understand the data, but also for us to be able to present to groups like this and the Frenchtown Working Group to help everyone else understand the data.
And this is the stuff that EPA thinks is okay, because sometimes there were questions about what kind of data EPA would accept. But this is the stuff they like.
Yeah, these are all part of the field sampling plans, and the data summary reports are all part of the current process, yeah. And I guess that kind of leads into the upcoming, we will be helping with reviewing the Remedial Investigation report. So that's the document that's going to summarize the sampling that's been done since 2014 through 2024. So that's going to be a really key document. It's going to talk about, it's really going to put the pieces together. This is all the sampling we've done. This is what it's showing. So that's going to be a really important review. Some of the pieces that we'll be looking at is just making sure that we feel like the fate and transport has been adequately understood, that we feel like the conclusions are supported by the data, and we also will be looking to make sure that if there are any data gaps, just trying to identify what we think we might need to address in a feasibility study.
So the summary reports are what goes into the Remedial Investigation report.
Yeah, exactly. So they're just a smaller piece, and they all get summarized in the RI.
So are we up to the last dot?
Yes.
I mean, is that ready? Are we ready to actually, after you put together your last report, we'll be ready for number 4 dot?
We're currently in the Remedial Investigation report. So okay. Yeah, that's getting compiled with all of the data that's been collected. We haven't seen it yet to start our review process, and I think we'll have a lot of back and forth on that process. So that's really the next step, is the Remedial Investigation report.
So where is it, if you haven't seen it?
The GSI, the consultant to the responsible party, is compiling it.
Have they given you a timeline?
We have not discussed the timeline yet.
We'll see you next week, that's all.
Yeah.
Thanks. Just curious. That's why we're here.
Yeah, I think that's going to be really helpful for us to all kind of see what the data is showing to start getting on the same page.
So hopefully January will be on number 5. I mean, the 4th dot.
it might take a little bit longer than January, but I appreciate the optimism.
January 2027.
That's, I mean, that's not unrealistic.
Yeah, I think that
It's really not. I mean, when you look at the thousands and thousands of pages that you have opinions on, and you have opinions on, and you have opinions on.
You do too.
Well, not really, but thank you.
yeah, it's gonna take a while.
But it's a lot, and it does have to become passable
Yeah.
to get to the next phase.
Yes.
And it does take a lot. It takes a long time.
Yeah. Yes.
But ideally, that would lead to our feasibility study
Yes,
plan.
and so that will follow the remedial investigation report, and that's where we'll start looking at alternatives for the remedy. So that's going to be really crucial for us to make sure that we feel like the wide range of remedial options are being considered and that we have the data that we need to evaluate them. Yeah.
I have a question about the DEQ review of the remedial investigation report. So I imagine, what I heard you say is there will be a lot of back and forth between you and EPA. At what point do you involve that stakeholder, the working group, and then the public?
Yeah,
and is it one and the same? Like, do you do them both at the same time?
That's a really good question. And we are having those conversations with EPA, starting to think about how are we going to roll out the RI. So I think we'll have more on that. I don't have a concrete answer, but that is something that we're thinking about, is how do we get the community and the stakeholders feedback a part of that process.
And then my other part of the question is, sometimes the turnarounds are so, it's like, yes, it takes a long time for you guys to do your part. And then it's like, okay, now public and CAG and stakeholders, you have, 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And so that's just, I guess, something to think about.
Yeah.
And then is there a law, a requirement that there is a public comment period for the remedial investigation report?
No.
And that's what sometimes then leads to those really short turnarounds, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So there isn't a formal comment for the public or the stakeholders. So I do hear what you're saying, and I think it is important for us to be engaging with the community and the stakeholders throughout the process and bringing everyone along so there isn't a surprise at the end. So we're meeting that. Yeah. Great points.
Are we talking months or years before you get your hands on your first look at the remedial investigation report?
Months. Yeah. They've been working on it, and I think some of the first chapters are put together. So we can probably start reviewing some of those here soon.
So are the GSI people, are they local?
Yeah, they're all based out of Missoula.
Okay, just checking.
Yeah.
Can you explain Donovan's role and all?
Yeah,
we do.
Oh, yeah, we have a slide.
Because I think that piece is important when we talk about the remedial investigation because of another layer.
Yeah, I'll cover that. So another thing that I wanted to mention that I do in my role is go out and observe the field work and the berm inspections when they happen in the spring. I think that's a really helpful part of the process, to just get eyes on the site, to see what it looks like, to see what the sampling looks like, to be able to see the soil cores when they're coming out of the ground, to know what the soil is looking like. It also helps us to understand some of the challenges of sampling. Like this picture was from last year when we were doing the sampling within the basins, and there were some challenges with making access roads to get down into these basins. And so it was helpful to be on site to kind of think through that process of, okay, where can we put an access road? Where would we want to sample if we can get to it? And sometimes you can't really tell when you're just looking at dots on a map where that sampling is representative of. So it was helpful to be on site to say, okay, we do really feel like this is capturing what's in those basins. The other photo here is one of the new wells that was installed last year, and it's helpful to kind of get a frame of reference for the seasonality of where that well is located. You can kind of see adjacent to the well, there's a channel that forms a lot of the times of the year. It's really only connected to the main channel during high water. So that is helpful for us to keep in mind when we're looking at data from this well to know kind of what it might be representing. Yeah, you can go to the next slide. Okay, so I'll talk about Haley and Aldrich and the role that they play in the process, and then I'll have Donovan introduce himself. So Haley and Aldrich provides technical assistance for us in the process. They help us with all aspects of our role, with reviewing the documents, really just from the technical side of things. They are local to Missoula, which is great because they understand this area. They are able to come out for meetings like this, which is great for them to hear from the community and others. So they provide technical support to us with reviewing the documents. And then they've also helped us do some data evaluation to support that document review. So when we are looking at a data summary report, if there is a conclusion, we can kind of have them do some data analysis to say, yeah, that makes sense with what we're seeing as well. They helped us present or prepare some figures from the data from 2023 and presented on that, which I think was really helpful to just have another group kind of look at the data and take away some of their conclusions. Because they are local, they also have been able to help with the field work, like observing fieldwork activities. Donovan went out and observed the sediment sampling last year, which was really helpful to make sure that we felt like the fine grained sediments were being targeted, and we felt like where samples were being collected were representative of where we thought materials might come to lie. And they also have access to a variety of technical experts. So I primarily work with Donovan, and he has a lot of great technical knowledge on hydrology and geology and just the general remediation process. But they also have other technical experts that can help with risk assessments if I have any questions on risk assessments, or a chemist that's really knowledgeable on lab procedures if we have questions on that. And then they're also really good at analyzing large data sets, which has been really helpful to have someone that's familiar with the coding process to be able to kind of look at the data and help us to understand if the historical data is consistent with some of the new data. So yeah, if you want to introduce yourself and add anything to that.
Sure. Yeah, my name is Donovan Power. Obviously, I work for Haley and Aldrich. I grew up in Missoula, went to the University of Montana for my undergrad, went to UW for my graduate work. I've worked at Haley and Aldrich only for the last year and a half. And right when I got brought on to work on this project, partly because I grew up here. And that was something that the community seemed like they were looking for. I mean, the one thing that I would emphasize besides my role is that I think that everybody, certainly at DEQ, and I think for GSI too, their office is right down the street from us. We all live here, and we're all scientists that are trying to do a good job on these things, and we really do care about this area. I grew up, breathing and smelling the pulp mill as a child my whole life. I'm born in 1977 here. Willis Curdy was one of my teachers. But so, I mean, I just want to emphasize that we are, local people, and we really do care about this site, and that's why we're involved in trying to do this. I think that the specific role that Haley and Aldrich, the real benefit that we have, that Brianna brought up, is that we can reach into a really deep bench of scientists. So if we want to try and figure out how PCBs are impacting the site and how paper mills may or may not be producing those. We have people that work on that topic all the time, and that's what they do. And we bring them into our meetings and hear from them on a regular basis. So we just have the ability to try and bring out a lot of experts to help us deal with some of these things. So that's my take.
Thank you. One more thing I just wanted to mention is where we get our funding for the work that we do in the Superfund process. Our funding comes from cooperative agreements with EPA, so that's how they provide us funding to perform our consultative role. These cooperative agreements kind of outline specifically the tasks that we think we'll be working on and how much time we think we'll be spending on those tasks. And they provide for management assistance, which is what my role is and everyone else at DEQ. And then they also provide for technical assistance, which is Haley and Aldrich and Donovan's role. And the funding that EPA gets for this project does come from the responsible party, because there is a responsible party at this site, but they don't have any oversight in what we do.
Brianna, can you explain, and this came in a meeting that, I'm really glad I understand it now. The reason that it is not funded through Superfund, through Congress funds that make up Superfund, the PRPs all put into a fund, and help me with this too. The PRPs all put into a fund that pays for this because it isn't actually a Superfund site. It's under administrative order of consent. That's how it was explained to us during a county commissioner meeting.
My understanding, so that Superfund is used when there isn't a viable responsible party. So some of my other sites, we've either aren't able to find a responsible party, or they aren't viable. They don't have enough money to support an investigation. But this site, since we do have a responsible party, we aren't drawing from the Superfund.
So I can speak to that just a little bit, Jerry. Even so, as you mentioned, the Smurfit-Stone site is not itself listed on the national priorities list, but it is operating under an AOC, an administrative order on consent, to roughly follow the standard Superfund process. Even at sites with a responsible party that are on the NPL, it would still be an AOC or a unilateral order that dictates sort of how some of these things like the funding and the responsibilities work. That is where the responsible party would agree to kind of fund the operations of the agencies and their work in the process, and commit to, that also has kind of a work plan that says, okay, we're going to go do the investigation. We'll write the remedial investigation report. We'll move into the feasibility study. So it is pretty typical at all these PRP sites. You would have some form of order that outlines the responsibilities for those responsible parties. So it's functionally not significantly different than if it was listed on the NPL.
Thanks, Kevin.
And I guess, without speaking, we don't see behind the curtain too much, but, the responsible parties themselves would have some sort of agreement about how they're splitting the costs responsible, associated with the site.
So we had a question.
Yeah.
So, for Kevin maybe. So Kevin, are the PRPs pretty consistent in following up with what is required of them? Or does DEQ have to, and the EPA have to go after these folks from time to time to meet the parameters of the consent decree?
Did you hear that, Kevin?
I can speak for the site, and I will say the responsible parties have been very involved and responsive. We haven't had to fight with them too much on this process. Yeah, it's not the case for all sites, but on this site they have been very, easy to work with. Any other questions? How many responsible parties are there? There are 3. One is Westra, International Paper, and the other one is M2 Green, but they aren't really active. We just mostly deal with the 2. International Paper and Westra. Any other questions? Okay. Well, thank you guys for your time. And
Yeah, I do have another question.
yeah,
Okay, so you said you meet monthly with the EPA
yeah, at a minimum.
at a minimum.
Mm-hmm.
So, could you just briefly describe that meeting?
Yeah.
With the EPA, because, if you do that, I may have a follow-up, depending on what you
Okay.
say.
It really depends what's going on in the process. So we meet with them pretty regularly. just to talk about timelines and what the next steps are. If we're reviewing a document, we'll oftentimes go through our comments and work through what those challenges might be. It just really depends on where we're at in the process, but we do meet with them quite a bit.
So is cooperation pretty consistent, or?
Yeah, I think we have a pretty good working relationship with EPA where they do value our opinions and insights, so they do reach out to us to see what we think on the process.
And communication is pretty consistent?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Thanks for the question.
I would just add, in addition to some of the technical questions, we do also, in our consultative role, try and work with EPA on public affairs, community engagement and outreach, those types of things as well.
So are we missing EPA tonight?
Yes, they're not.
For 2 months in a row now? Oh, but they did say they'd be there at our December meeting.
Yes. I do know they weren't able to get approval during this time. To attend, but they are hoping for December.
Oh, man. Yeah, that's tough.
Yes. Yeah.
Thanks for the explanation. I should have known that. No problem.
Okay, thank you. It's good to know that. So I'm gonna, before I get to Montreux, we had a discussion with Sophie and Courtney and Jack maybe a couple months ago about what we really needed as a K. And one of the things that the admin team identified that we needed was some communication and outreach help to get more of the community involved with what's happening at the site. We know it's a really slow process. We know that people lose interest. It's hard to stay on top of it. It's technical. Acronyms get thrown out to the point where people just go, ugh, you kidding me? True, right? I mean, it's a lot. And we also felt really strongly that it was an opportunity for us to involve the students. And we had a misstep, what we felt was a misstep, the CAG leadership team a couple years ago with Montberg taking the ball and running with it and maybe not being as involved as they could have and would have and should have. And so we wanted to really get them more involved from a student advocacy group, because your generation is really important to us and to what's happening in the process. And so they were so generous about wanting to fulfill those roles and have been really intentional on asking us good questions and wanting to fill a role that your group really is part of that group that we don't get to visit with hardly at all. So I'll let you guys go from there. Thank you.
We also bring on that paper.
Yeah, we emailed the slides to you on Monday. I also got my own copy if you need.
Who did you email them to?
Jerry.
If you have them on a fund drive, that'd be the easiest.
Tony wants to look
Can
at
we?
print out.
That'd
be great.
Can we borrow your fund drive?
Thank you, super. It's my favorite.
Yeah, what's the Wi-Fi password for the?
Let me tell you that.
Please.
Thank you. Thanks.
I meant to print it. Oh, I got it. Okay, she might.
You are on it.
There it is. Cute.
Scan to connect with that.
Everyone on Zoom is seeing it now. So the fire hall Wi-Fi is no longer secure. They'll have to change their password again next week.
Of course, it's something like that too, right? Has to be.
Sparky.
And then.
Okay. If you can just join the Zoom meeting, that may be the easiest way. Then you can just share your screen.
Wow, that's a good idea.
Or you can send me the presentation, either way.
If it's all right with you, I think I prefer to send it to you.
Okay, yep. I'm sam@clarkfork.net.
Okay, you got it.
And Zoom got, we're not sharing. We've got Amy coming back.
Sam at clarkfork.net.
Yep.
Okay.
No, sorry, .org. Why did I say .net?
It's you
What am I
probably
talking
a
about?
Jerry at
So I'm
the
sitting here,
net,
yeah.
probably.
Well, what do you use at a river? A net.
Not always.
Well, not if the river's poisoned and you can't fish there.
That would be okay.
Details.
Just mind.
Okay. Oh, and we got to share the screen. Okay, I think we're good.
Do you want me to move to do the slides?
Sure.
Okay.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for being here tonight. I'm Courtney Rosenberg, and I'm currently a Montpurg intern. And Montpurg is a nonprofit advocacy organization that helps empower and engage students around political or environmental issues. And here with me is Jack Baranski and Maria Queedy.
And Sophie.
Yes, and Sophie.
There's looking up.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Jack Baranski. I'm in my senior year of undergrad at University of Montana. I'm studying environmental science and sustainability, Russian, sustainable business strategy, and world languages and competencies. So Smurfit-Stone is actually what got me interested in Montpurg because I had done research before with some of my classes. I thought that seems like a good topic to work on, and it'd be a good change in the community to make.
Well, yeah, and I'm Maria Queedy. I am getting my Master of Science in Environmental Studies at UM. My undergraduate degrees are Environmental Studies, and I got a Climate Change Studies for a minor. And I'm currently working on my thesis, which entails sustainable tourism practices, specifically on island communities in Greece.
And I'm also a second-year graduate student in the Environmental Studies program. And I'm passionate about environmental justice of contaminated and Superfund communities. And so, as Jerry mentioned, we spoke a couple months ago and we listened carefully about the concerns that the CAG has and how we can increase engagement with students. And after critical examination, we basically designed this proposal and developed it with basically 3 different components that are experience, community, and authority. And so Montpurg, we like to think that Montpurg is going to be the connective tissue that will bridge students and community members and the technical processes of environmental restoration. We hope to increase public understanding of complex cleanup processes through consistent communication and accessible information. This helps transform technical updates into public engagement by ensuring cleanup process is a community-driven process. And so then the next part that we will go into, and these are the 4 components that we included within our proposal that you'll see. And the first part is going to be mission and purpose alignment with the CAG. Second will be strengthening structure and communication. Third is digital presence and visibility. And the 4th will just be outreach. And so the first part we decided that will be important will be drafting templates for meeting agendas and minutes. We think it's important to have a consistent format that makes meetings easier to follow, keep discussions on track, and makes it simple for people who couldn't attend to understand what was conveyed during the previous meetings. We hope to develop and rework an easier, more concise mission statement that defines the CAG's purpose. This will help new members, agencies, and the public understand what the CAG does and why it exists. We want people to, when they hear the CAG's name, immediately understand its role in the cleanup process. And then the last part of this structure and communication is we want to assemble an updated contact list. We want to make sure the CAG's contact information is accurate centralized, and publicly available. This will help residents know who to reach out to with concerns and feedback. And then the next section is going to be digital presence and visibility. And this is going to include a CAG website. So a simple public-facing website that acts as a central hub for CAG information. This will also include the group's mission statement, history, meeting summaries, contact information, as well as links to EPA and DEQ documents. The next part is, since Instagram is more accessible to a younger generation, we're hoping to link the CAG Facebook with an Instagram so that this can reach students and younger Missoulians who may not otherwise hear or know about the cleanup. It will allow for easy cross-posting of visual and events. And the last section here is going to be an email newsletter. This will provide short, digestible updates about the CAG meetings, new developments, and upcoming events. And this could even be shared in the Frenchtown School newsletter. So together, these tools will help create a communication ecosystem, one that will make it easier for the public to find the CAG, follow its work, and stay engaged over time. And so now I will hand it over to Jack.
Hello, everybody. Here at Montperg, after our conversation back in September, we really wanted to think about what communities have been underrepresented in this conversation and regarding Smurfit-Stone and how we can get them more involved. So the first and arguably most important audience that we want to reach out more to is the Confederated Salish and Kootenai tribes. They have been excluded from this conversation many times in the past, from all the way back in 1958 with the original fish kills, even up into the early 2000s during some of the EPA work that has been done with Smurfit-Stone. So we seek to increase more open collaboration with CSKT, get more indigenous perspectives, especially since, frankly speaking, the Clark Fork River is a river that these tribes have had a connection to for untold millennia. It is an issue that is on their lands, and it is affecting their right to fish as guaranteed to them by the Hellgate Treaty of 1889. Our second main audience is going to be student presence. We want to increase student awareness of Smurfit-Stone, and our primary strategy for that right now is through on-campus materials and materials that will be spread at our Montperg events. If any of you have been to the campus recently, you will know that Montperg is always tabling somewhere or holding some kind of event. We are everywhere. So yes, that is one of the strategies we had. And mostly we think that students at are a very good crowd because students throughout history have been very politically active groups that have caused a lot of change. And we're just up the river in Missoula. The third group is recreators, people that use this river for their recreational activities. I myself am a fly fisherman, and I didn't even know that there's a fish consumption advisory downstream of Smurfit-Stone. So what we would want to do is spread some information and promotional materials to fly shops, boating equipment stores, basically people that have connections to recreational communities in this community. Frankly speaking, especially fly fishers, because of the fact that they were some of the original people in the 1960s and 70s that stepped up to bat when Smurfit-Stone was in operation and said, you got to stop dumping poison in the river. It's killing all the fish. Next slide, please. Here are some things that I've already come up with so far. Some of our main audiences and places we were thinking about putting these up were the Frenchtown Senior Center, schools in the Frenchtown community, fly shops, and one thing that we want to do is we want to design a logo for the CAG, something recognizable, something we can put on the corners of these posters, something we can have in the community, something that's just recognizable, visually appealing. Here is a poster I've come up with that we could put in the Senior Center or in schools. It's more stressing basically a little bit of history, why it's an issue and how you can get involved, not getting too in the weeds. And then this is one that I'm a little proud of. This is a poster I came up with for fly shops talking about the history of Smurfit-Stone and how it's directly impacted the fisheries downstream. So, I mean, you got to know your market, right?
Are you trying to get people to bring their fish that they catch near Smurfit?
Honestly, I just looked up a stock image of a guy holding a fish. In order to get that, that's sort of just a design that I've come up with, but no, we're not, it's not like CWD testing where we're trying to get people to bring the fish. It's more just, you want to do that. You want to go fishing. You want to be able to catch fish, and maybe you want to be able to eat the fish that you catch. I mean, I sure like doing that. But it's hard to do that when the fish are at threat from all of these heavy metals in the water. And it's hard to do that when you'd be putting yourself at harm by eating the fish that you catch. Another idea we've come up with, oh, what a shame I was proud of this title, the Humble One-Pager, essentially just a one-page document that, like flyer, that we can hand to new people attending CAG meetings for the first time, or just have them in a stack at the CAG meeting. Oh, thank you so much.
I don't know how to get rid of it. We'll just get rid of it.
I don't think you can get rid of it. I think it's... Yeah. All right. Thank you. It's essentially just a one-page document that we could have at these CAG meetings, sort of like the meeting minutes or our board proposal that we handed out. Just explaining what we mentioned all these acronyms, explaining what some of these acronyms stand for, explaining a little bit about the history of Smurfit-Stone, where we're at now and where we want to go with it. Basically just to make the CAG seem a little bit less technical and intimidating to newcomers, and just explain what's going on to them, because the more approachable this is, the more likely people are to get involved in it. This is this is more of a poster that I came up with, but basically what is it, who's affected, main causes, some facts about it, the effects, what we're doing, some solutions that we want. This is originally a poster, but essentially it would cover those topics. Here's some posters I came up with for the UM campus that are just kind of fun. This one I came up with as a joke in between working on posters. Girl, they poisoned the river. That started off as a joke, but people actually really like it. And people have been quoting it around the office and just within the community. And ironically, it's seriously been doing a good job of getting people aware of Smurfit-Stone. I really didn't expect it to be so popular.
It's out right now.
They're not out right now.
Okay.
No, it's just me being a blabbermouth and telling everybody about it.
Okay.
But one of my coworkers already made a friendship bracelet that had GTPTR on it that he gave to me, so it's making waves. Yeah, and here's the poster which you already saw that basically conveys a little bit about the history. And I mean, this has a little bit more, I wouldn't say inflammatory, but it definitely goes more into the toxic chemicals that are at the Smurfit-Stone site. This is more for a student audience because students like danger. Students like urgency, danger, importance. It's what gets them involved in things. And I mean, none of these are mistruths. There are a lot of dangerous things at Smurfit-Stone that are putting the community at risk. Next slide, please. We plan to do a screening of the documentary Pulp Friction, either on the UM campus, but more likely at the Roxy Movie Theater in Missoula. Nice central location, good venue. We plan on having it be admission-free for more community attendance. And we would be having a Q&A panel afterwards. And my coworker Courtney has already begun work on assembling a good panel of experts so that the audience can really get to know everything in depth about what happened, what's happening, what we can do.
And the fire guys like to count bodies. I mean, we've seen openings at the Roxy where the line goes around the block, and the last people in the line, they get X'd out because there's too many bodies inside. So the fire department does get involved.
Interesting.
Just thought I'd warn you.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah. Thanks, Jack. Our next goal is to create 2 different surveys. The first one is the community survey. And the whole point of the community survey is to connect any gaps that the community has. We will do a largely digital, possibly site-based, on what the community actually knows about Smurfit-Stone. And this survey will help us determine the needs and gaps the community has so we can adjust our outreach projects accordingly. And a MOPERG intern next spring will work on the community survey.
But we have not yet determined whether the community will be limited to Frenchtown or include Missoula as well. So we would love some feedback on that at the end of our presentation. The next survey is for our stakeholders. This survey will gather data to better understand different stakeholder values, gaps like what is and what is not working, and get a general sense of what needs to be addressed or completed to keep moving forward. We will distribute the survey to members of the CAG, CSKT, and other organizations involved with the CAG. And then we will present this data back to the CAG, and we hope this can give direction for what the CAG needs to improve on. My vision and hope is that this stakeholder survey will help us discover gaps in engagement and information between our stakeholders.
So in terms of what Montpurg has the capacity to handle financially, in terms of designing a website and working with the CAG in order to make a website that has everything that it would need to cover, the history, information about the CAG, we can design it. We just do not have the funds to pay for it to be hosted like online. We have the similar situation with off-campus promotional material like posters and stickers. We can design them for you. I already have some designs that I showed you, and I'd be happy to make any changes you'd like to them. But we don't have the money to print them out ourselves. We can handle the Pulp Friction movie screening, and we can handle promotional material on our own campus. And we can also, similar situation, we can make that Google contact list, but if there is essentially payment required to host it online, as is sometimes the case, we will not be able to do that. But essentially all of our collaboration and design work with the CAG, we can just handle that. But financially, unfortunately, we do not have the capacity to take on all of these projects ourselves. So here's a tentative timeline. On November 6th, we will present to the CAG leadership. That's right now. Sometime late next spring, although we're thinking sometime in February. Essentially, we have to work with the Roxy a little bit and then figure out when, because as you guys know, they have those terrific film festivals, but we wouldn't want it to coincide with that. Sometime either late next spring or perhaps in February, we're going to do the Pulp Friction documentary screening. And sometime next spring in general, we will have the community survey to assess people's perspective in the community about different aspects of it. Maybe we conduct a survey and then find out that a lot of the people interested are parents with small children that are putting them to bed around, 7 p.m. on a Thursday night. And also the stakeholder survey so that the CAG can help understand its own dynamics and its own workings better to better function within the community. Anyways, that's what we've got for you, and we're happy to open the floor up to questions.
So we, admin team hasn't really had an opportunity to thoroughly and intentionally go through this, and I think it's something that we would really like to do before we see any surveys and see any posters go out.
Oh, of course.
And all of that stuff. For sure. I think that we're really, I think that that's just a starting point that we really would hope that we have sort of consistency in what we want to see.
Well, and then to make it really productive, we need to involve all of the partners in this.
Yes.
And I'm a little bit, I'm concerned that it needs to, probably need to have a better understanding of the Superfund process and how these efforts would really integrate well into that process.
Agreed, because the EPA has a process, and part of our job as the CAG is to hold them accountable to that process. And that's a big
that's a big function of the CAG, is to be that liaison in the community. And I think that part of what I hope to see is that the connectivity of the CAG that goes to Montpurg, that goes to the students, that we can collaboratively share that common goal. And I guess with that, that was one of the reasons that we really started having those conversations of what we can agree on and what we want to see in the future. And I think that those conversations really lead into that continuity of those messages and what those look like.
But of course, yes, that is one of our absolute utmost goals, is to work directly with the CAG. And I mean, that's why we're having the CC list. That's why we're having the Google contact list, is because we want to be completely transparent and work in conjunction with the CAG and make sure you guys see and approve any promotional materials we plan on putting out, especially within the Frenchtown community, any surveys we put out, because that was one of the very important aspects covered in our meeting back in September, is that when the messaging isn't entirely clear and somebody jumps the gun, it can sometimes do more harm than good. So yeah, that's exactly one of our goals, is working very closely directly with the CAG. I believe it was you during the meeting that described Montpurg as the CAG's gun for hire. I like that term. We're essentially here to increase public and essentially student awareness of Smurfit-Stone and the CAG, but we're not here to try and do anyone's job for them.
Thank you. You guys did a nice job.
So what's the best way the CAG communicates with you? Through a website, an email?
We meet with, so we have a pretty good Jack and Courtney and Sophie and I have we agreed, the admin team, to, and we've been doing a good job. Yeah, we have. So we just agreed that we would communicate and copy everybody with comments and suggestions and next steps. So, and I think that that's worked out pretty well. So we've been doing that. And again, you know, I think this is just a first step in what our next step is.
Great. Perfect. Any other questions?
Just a general comment, Jerry, you certainly raised the point that we need to think about how the community engages with this process in a constructive way. And I absolutely agree with that. I think it's always a good time to support, you know, just a better general knowledge of the site. But Superfund being as slow and technical as it is, there's some stuff, and you know, as we were discussing, for example, with the final RI document, there is no formal process for community engagement there, right? So yeah, I just want to echo what you said there and add a little more emphasis to the upcoming feasibility study. It's not happening tomorrow, but we want to go into that with a knowledgeable community. And you know, the more the community can actually form their articulate their own perspective from their own knowledge of the site, the more powerful it will be.
Agreed. And I think that one of the things that we really didn't talk about in our meeting was continuity of, you guys are all going to graduate and go on to bigger and better things, God knows where, maybe here, maybe there, we don't know. But we don't want to, and I talk about this a lot, it happens, and I'm always happy to meet with people, but we'll get a graduate student in environmental studies, and I'm not kidding you, I've probably had 50 emails in my time on the K about going to meet with you, I'm doing Smurfit-Stone. We would love to see, this is how we've done it, this is what we've done, these are the things, and to make it so that it is continuity, where it's not reinventing the wheel every 2 years or every semester. This is what we do, this is how we do it, so that we keep that consistency and how we're working together. Just how it's consistent, I think, is really important, and that's my goal too, as part of our admin team, is that we want to be able to pass the baton, and we want you guys to be able to pass the baton, so that it is
consistent.
For sure, and I think this proposal is definitely a foundation for Montpurg. I 100% agree with you. Maybe Sophie can speak on this better, but next semester we have 2 new interns that will be working on different outreach projects that hopefully we will have established with you all. So hopefully every semester the new interns that come in or interns from previous semesters can continue working where it has been left off. That is our goal and hope.
Sophie, do you want to quickly define what your role is so that we can hear from you too?
Yeah, I'm Sophie Moon. I'm the regional director for Montford for Missoula and Butte. So I help facilitate the internship at the University of Montana. And that is also why students are up here presenting to you, because Montford is a student-led and student-facing organization. So it is much more important for you to hear from these people than from me. I will just tag on to what Maria said. I know that Maria is going to be continuing into the spring semester. Courtney will be joining us in a part-time role. And then we do have multiple interns who are signed on for the spring who are really excited about Smurfit. So that is to just put a little fire in the process that, if we can try to have some kind of proposal worked out, some sort of collaborative agreement before January, that would be ideal. And of course, like, if that's not possible, we can always push this back. But our students they're moving and they're really excited and eager to be a part of this in a way that is meaningful. So we're happy to meet you guys where you're at and answer any questions and do that kind of work too.
Thank you. And I think to add to that, I totally understand kind of, the continuity and having new people in and out. And that's something I figured out when I was interviewing stakeholders around this. And I wasn't even part of Montpurg at that time. But I was like, they want someone that's going to be constant. I'm feeling this. And then once I kept showing up, and I still will be here. If I'm going to continue living here, I will still show up to meetings. And also another concern of mine was when I did my stakeholder presentation, a lot of people were getting, before I even presented, they were just like, I don't know, Superfund. I was like, that's the biggest part of this. We need to help gauge that gap and help people understand how Superfund works, because they'll understand how slow the process actually is and they'll get it. And so a lot of people are jumping the gun. And so I think explaining Superfund and really examining and emphasizing that is important. And yeah, I'll continue joining your meetings and I'll still be here. So.
Great, thanks.
Thank you so much, you guys.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you, guys. Thanks.
The great picture this week. I did that picture.
I know it's hateful, but it's a great picture. It's a terrible picture.
So, last month, we started a discussion on, what we can agree on. And I thought it was a really solid step builder to what we can continue to agree on and what we can say, this is what the community wants, by having these conversations on what we can agree on. We're a little bit out of time, and I don't know that we want to go into those discussions now. What do you think, Sam? Jen, jump in.
Me? You?
Go ahead,
Sam. I guess given the time frame, I don't know if we need to right now, but I do think that, there are a couple common threads from that discussion and tonight. One of the things we can agree on is the need for the CAG and other groups to, Montpurg, Clark Coalition, DEQ, and others, to facilitate this bi-directional communication between EPA, which is actually in charge here, and the community, who are the ones which, bear the brunt of the environmental destruction or risk in EPA violence. I think fundamentally, we just need to remember that it's really important to remember that it's bidirectional. We want the public to understand not necessarily the nuances of Superfund process, because no one actually wants to understand that, but the risk at the site, and the uncertainty about the risk at the site and what the cleanup opportunities look like, and the role that the public can play. And then we want the agencies, and in particular the EPA and the PRP, to understand the public's concern about this. So yeah, I think this came out quite a bit last month in that discussion of what we agree on, and it has to be bidirectional.
I agree with that, David. I think.
Yeah, I mean, I think one important element of the proposal was just the focus on community engagement. And I think we can all, just witness tonight, there's just a couple of members of the community that are they're just here as representatives of themselves. And, we've seen that over the years, over the decade or more on that. And it's a big challenge with Superfund. It's a slow process, and a lot of that's intentional to do it correctly. It takes time, and it's hard to maintain interest and engagement from folks. And that's a big challenge, but
huge challenge.
Yeah, and I don't have a solution to that. But I really appreciated Montford's efforts to help the community with that. And I think that's what we've all wanted, and we've tried different things. Yeah, so I like to see that emphasis, and I'm hopeful. But yeah, there's not like one date that's important for people to show up,
right.
And one moment or one thing to comment on. It's months and months and months.
Years.
Yeah. I didn't want to,
And it's as a community member, I go to the store and somebody says,
she's just at the
huh? What happened?
I don't.
Anyway, as a community member, I go to the store and somebody says to me, "What's happening at the mill?" Well, it is really so. People are so tired of hearing, well, we're waiting for the sampling results. Nothing's really happening. We're waiting for the sampling results. Yes, I know you've been on site. I know you've been sampling. I know you've been out there when it's freezing cold. I know you've been out there when it's mucky. I know you guys got stuck. I know all that. But you're right. People want a date where they're going to find out, well, what is happening and what's next. They don't want to wait until 2027, but the reality is we don't have a choice. And I think that that's the hardest part of all, is that we just don't have a choice. The process is what the process is. And it's hard to convey that. It's hard to get people to stay with it. Myself included. You get fried from it. When we had that conversation, I'm like, gosh. Sometimes I just want to say I'm done with me when it's over. But I think that the community engagement piece is really important. And I think just that messaging is important, and just to keep it consistent and to track where we're going. I think those conversations about what we can agree on are really imperative in educating the community with outreach about what we do agree on and the levels that we can agree on to move the process forward. So I think Brian will be here next month, and I think we're going to really try to expand much more on those conversations. I think we'll work as an admin team to send out some messaging that can get people to think more about those points, and to help you guys frame what that proposal might look like, to really help you identify what our talking points are, because you're shooting from the hip, not knowing what the messaging we're trying to get to be consistent. Does that make sense? Sort of. Somebody's looking at me, though. So I think, anybody else? Jen, do you have anything to add? Are you still there? Yeah, you are.
Yeah, I guess I
I appreciate the presentations today. I really want, though, to highlight how much good the CAG has done, that the CAG still exists, that many of the same faces have shown up for 9 years and have now the education to translate some of the more technical language and or reality of what's happening on the site to community members. So I want to just really talk about how well, I mean, it's a group of people that have also made an impact on the depth and breadth of the sampling to understand what's at risk. And so I want to just applaud the CAG for doing a really good job and making a difference for human health and the environment.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I think, a couple of years ago, we definitely identified some gaps in understanding for Smurfit-Stone. We made an attempt to patch some of those gaps, and we're about to get another flush of understanding from the data that's been collected more recently. And that's going to be a real point to see, are there more gaps that have to be still investigated or not? And at that point, I think we'll know what the next steps are. And I'm a little bit apprehensive about taking rapid next steps right before we have time to digest what's coming soon. And I would say that in the community survey idea, I really think once we get some of this understanding farther down the road, community outreach to educate on the process rather than surveying people or finding mechanisms to spread what our understanding is. Just my thoughts, just off the top of my head without putting much thought into it. So.
Shannon? I have lots of thoughts swirling around, but I'm not sure that they're ready for prime time.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. Good. Anybody else? No? So appreciate everybody's time. Happy Thanksgiving. And we will see you on December 4th. Sorry.
Yeah.
December 4th. And we'll look forward to furthering our conversation on what we can agree with on, and then we'll get with you guys too. So thank you. Your presentation was really good. Thank you. Thanks, everybody.
Yay.
Sorry, thanks for hanging with us, our technical difficulties.
Yes.
Thank you for the HDMI.
Yeah.
Before you go.
I was all the time.
Under the HDMI cord, it's
so easy, and I'm still laughing.
Thanks, everyone.
Well,
Yeah. Yeah.